All right, everyone. We are recording this video from our car, and uh, I just wanted to talk for just a few minutes. I won't hold you very long. About the age of the Earth versus the age of the universe. Now, there are basically three scenarios that are espoused. There's more than three versions per se, but these three versions, the other versions are part of. I don't know how to put that. But you have the idea of a very old universe and a very old Earth. Then you have a version that has a very young universe and a very young Earth. And then you have a third scenario, which I think has the most validity, which is a very old universe and a very young Earth. Now, this is a chicken and egg problem in some ways, because according to the scriptures, the universe, that is to say, the cosmos, with all, I'm talking about stars and moons and planets, galaxies, were created on day 4 of Genesis, whereas the earth was there when the lights came up in day 1. And the thing that we need to understand is we view time in a certain specific way. And that way is that this moment that we're living in right now is preceded by moments leading back all the way to the moment that time began, and is going forward until the point when time will end. But science has shown us, I say science, but the pursuit of knowledge called science by scientists have shown us that time is not quite as predictable or solid as it appears from our perspective. And some might argue that that's a false view of time, but the truth is our perception of time is based on personal experience. But they have measured the passage of time using clocks that were precisely identical using measurements of time processes such as radio decay of elements. And a clock on the surface of this planet and a clock that is up above us in near the surface of the atmosphere or higher run at a different rate. Our satellites actually run, their time clocks run at a different rate than ours because they are high above our gravity well. Then using the inverse square law, the gravitational effect is much lower. On top of which, they're also traveling at different speed than we are. And it turns out that time is relative to both gravity and speed. And I don't pretend to understand precisely how that works. I don't think anyone truly understands. Just because they can create a mathematical model doesn't mean they really understand it. But we can understand the result of whatever processes causes this to be. And in the equation in the theory of relativity, E equals mc squared, one of the factors in that equation is the factor c, which deals with the speed of light, which is supposed to be a constant. Turns out, light does not have a constant speed because light negligibly in effect, is affected by gravity. And the theory is, and the observations tend to agree, that if you have a very large gravity well, such as a black hole, time slows down because light speed is affected, because the gravitational effect of light, though small on light, is small. With gravity wells of the kind that are produced by black holes is such that it slows light. It sucks all the light out, and it affects it. It either, if it's traveling towards the black hole, it would increase. If it's traveling away from the black hole, which is the light we would see, it is slowed down. So, without getting too technical, maybe I have gotten too technical in some ways already, the universe is expanding. And though everything started out when God first created it at the same time rate initially, because there was nothing else in the universe but the earth and the structure of the universe, which is not a physical structure. It's a quantum structure. In fact, quantum structure may not even be the lowest, the most essential level of the structure. But the quantum level is the closest level that we have been able to detect. And I said detect, not actually observe directly, but to detect using various techniques. The behavior of particles and fields and all of these things at the quantum level, which once again, I don't even think the people that are doing the theorizing really understand quantum mechanics to the extent that they pretend to. But what we do know about it is enough to cause us to realize that things are very, very different than what we can perceive in the macro level, which is the level we live on. Even the microscopic level behaves much more like this level that we're on, and the atomic level and the subatomic level, things begin to shift slightly. But when you get down to the quantum level, which is a subatomic level in the sense, because sub means below and atomic, so it's below that, but it's just below even the myons and pions and other things, the behavior of quantum fields and how they affect the particles we call subatomic. And something else that we won't go into right now, because this is not an explanation of quantum mechanics. But when it comes to dealing with time, we cannot be entirely sure of ourselves based on our own perceptions, because our own perceptions are not able to give us a clue as to what goes on at the very lowest level, the level at which God affects the entire universe. So when the lights come up in Genesis chapter 1, there is the planet Earth, and the firmament is apparently already there, whatever the firmament is in your interpretation. This is what I interpret to be the very structure of space and time. And it's static. That is to say, it is not expanding at this point. It is not until day 4, when God adds other matter to this balance, that he starts the universe expanding, and I believe that's to keep things in balance. And has to adjust the laws of physics and chemistry and everything in order to facilitate the addition of all this matter. If you think about it, at the beginning, when we first come on the scene, the earth is without form and void and is basically a ball of water. And God begins to alter the water into various things, such as eventually dry land. But the firmament is apparently already there. And so God separates some of the water out of the planet into the cosmos. But this is still in balance. There's no addition of new material into the universe. No more matter. See, we know of no a way of creating or destroying matter or energy. We can transform one from one to the other, but we cannot affect how much matter and energy is in the universe. However, this is not something that is impossible to God. In fact, He put the first matter and energy into the universe. And I believe that the firmament is a reference to the structure upon which all of this plays out. And so God, on day 4, He puts all this other matter into the universe. Or perhaps He changes the matter, the waters above, if you would, into everything we see. But that is a huge amount of matter. So it doesn't seem likely that unless the Earth was huge and filled almost all the then universe, which was much, much smaller, not a singularity, but a very large ball of water, if that's the scenario, and converted all that water above into everything that's up there in the cosmos. Far more matter than was remaining on the Earth. You say, well, that sounds a little bit like the Big Bang. Well, it's not, because everything wasn't in a pinprick sized black hole. Black holes, as far as we know, only are created by the collapse of stars. First they go supernova, and then they collapse. And that's been the observation. But when the universe has the addition of the planets and stars and moons and the gravitational relationships between all of those bodies out there, then as the universe begins to expand, time becomes relative to the particular place in the universe you exist. And if the Earth was at the center to start with, which it was according to Genesis, then everything is expanding away from us. And that is exactly what we seem to observe with the redshift. Though there's some iffy things about the redshift that give you pause. But the point is that it appears the universe is expanding away from us, which would put us at or very near the center of the universe. And so our relative motion in comparison to the rest of the universe is relatively small. Now, relativity is relative terminology. Relative means that we could be moving at a zillion miles an hour, but if everything else is moving at 1,000 times that rate, or other stuff is moving at 1,000 times that rate, and everything else is moving faster than us, we are moving relatively slow. So time is moving at a different rate for us than it is for the rest of the universe. And so the universe is expanding away from us at a very rapid rate. It could very well be, in fact, is most likely that the universe, in relative sense of time, as we discovered to be not the way we thought it was, or the way we experience it ourselves, is very much older than this planet. And this planet is only thousands of years old. There's plenty of proofs to that. But it can very well be that the rest of the universe is much, much older, even though it was created later, because of relativity and quantum mechanics and these aspects of science that we have. And sorry about all the wiggling with the camera, because I'm holding it in my hand as a cell phone. We are on a very strange universe, very different than what our perceptions of it are. The evolutionists, based on their worldview, interpret all these things one way. We as creationists, knowing that God made the heavens and the earth, has in fact been in charge of mechanics, quantum mechanics, and relativity and physics, and all of the things that he's done is adjusted. They just recently discovered that the universe has sped up its expansion rate from when they first started measuring it is increased. And why this should be is hard to figure, but the one thing we can know or can understand and assume based on a biblical worldview is that it must have been necessary in order to keep the universe stable. So God increased the expansion rate of the universe. How many times the universe is expanded or contracted? Not expanded and contracted. The speed of expansion has changed relative to time past. From our perspective, is very much debatable. And the experience of someone who was on one of those planets around one of those stars in an outer galaxy, which I don't believe in space aliens of any kind, as far as that goes, of this physical universe, would be entirely different than our own. And we would probably appear to be very, very much younger than we really are from our perspective to someone on such a planet if they could detect our actual age of our planet. We can make assumptions based on what we know about how conditions are out there. And they would, if there was somebody out there, they would have the same problem dealing with us. And since we believe God created Earth first, or made Earth first, I should say, that's another complete argument about the difference between creation and making, or the design process in the mind of God, and then the subsequent bringing it into existence, we call, sometimes refer to as creation, but it was in the mind of God before even the first thing, which was the earth, existed. And the original earth apparently existed in the dark, because when the lights come up, it's there. So, how all of that works out is another thing. But the debate about the age of the earth and the age of the universe is centered around trying to prove that this planet is millions and billions, maybe even billions of years old, and the evolution of life on the planet and all that kind of good gobbledygook, when in fact that explanation is based on a worldview that tends to exclude God. And yet there's plenty of evidence that God exists, and that Genesis actually works much better than their hokey theories of the Big Bang, which keep having to include theoretical stuff that they can't detect at all, such as quantum matter, and therefore quantum mass, and quantum energy, and because of quantum mass, quantum gravity. And nobody has any clue how any of that would work, except to fit it into shoehorn it into their theory to make their theory work. Much better explanation is in the beginning. God created the heavens and the earth, and God said, and there was. So there you go. I've given you my viewpoint on the subject. You don't have to agree with me. You can Believe whatever you want to. But the truth is, as Ken Hovind says, I'm not trying to get you to teach my stuff in school. They are. And the truth is, the truth will be revealed. But for many, it will be way, way too late. Well, y'all all have a blessed day. And may the God of glory give you grace and peace and show you his will. And y'all be good. I'll see you another time.